Let's do this. Okay. My name is Omar Christides, and it's a pleasure to welcome you all to our first of 4 webinars on unlocking e-commerce in collaboration with Mastercard in Saudi Arabia. Over the next 2 months, every other week, we'll be hosting a webinar with industry leaders across a range of topics, but focused on supporting SMEs and merchants leveraging e-commerce to drive business growth, especially in the light of the rapid disruption brought about by COVID-19. We've seen a massive uptick in adoption of e-commerce, huge interest from offline SMEs to come online. Large businesses are reorganizing their supply chains. Of course, challenges of logistics throughout the crisis. And so there's a big interest in demand right now in moving to e-commerce and the opportunity that e-commerce presents to drive business growth. Today, we're launching the first of the 4 series of webinars with Mastercard, and today's session is on reinventing commerce, state of play during COVID-19. And I invite you to keep track of the 3 upcoming webinars. Our next webinar will be on marketplaces and challenges and opportunities. That will be on June 30th. It's about 9 days from now. On July the 14th, we'll have the impact of COVID-19 on consumer behavior. So here we'll look at how consumers are changing their spending, purchasing, and consumption behavior. And then on July the 28th, on the state of commerce in the new normal. So looking at what will commerce look like in the future, which of these behaviors are going to really stick around for the long term that we've adopted through the COVID crisis. So without further ado, it's my privilege to introduce the moderator, Mohamed Fayed, the co-founder and CEO of GrubTech. I'll ask him to give a few words of introduction on his business and introduce the panelists and kick off the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Omar. I really appreciate it, and it's a privilege to be here with JK, Ryan, and Majed. So, gentlemen, I think it's appropriate just to start with a brief introduction about yourselves and a little bit about the role you play in your relative organizations to help frame the discussions and the questions that will ensue. I'll start. My name is Mohamed Fayed. In a previous life, I was the Senior Vice President of Digital for AlTahan Group. My organization gave birth to one of the largest luxury online players in the Middle East, Unas, a multi-branded lifestyle play called Nisnas, Mamas and Papas, and Gap. And under the last 5 years, I helped transform the digital arm of a traditional brick and mortar player. Since then, I have co-founded a company called GrubTech, which is intended on building an operating system for restaurants as they move away from brick and mortar dependence to online, requiring everything from food aggregator integrations to efficient in-kitchen IoT sensors to maximize utilization of their space. So obviously digital being near and dear to my heart, and as Omar mentioned, COVID has thrusted our environment at least 5 years into the future. JK, if I may ask you to go next, please.
Sure. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm JK Khalil. I look after the business in Saudi Arabia and Bahrain for Mastercard. In a previous life at Mastercard, I was the head of the advisors, which is the consulting arm, the value-added services and consulting and advisory arm for Mastercard in Middle East. And prior to that, I was a principal with Booz & Company. In a previous life, I was a software engineer / geek and wrote software for financial institutions across Middle East, France, and the US. I've been with Mastercard for about now 3 years in this role, 2.5, 3 years, I would say, yeah, in this role as GM of Saudi and Bahrain. And to your point, Mohamed, absolutely agree with you. COVID has basically done in the space of 4 or 5 months what we've been trying to do over the last maybe 7, 8 years, whether it is driving, this whole secular shift to, cashless payments, contactless payments, e-com growth, and people getting more comfortable with digital technologies when it comes to seamless payments and invisible payments and all kinds of payments across rails and omnichannels. So kind of a historic moment and a very interesting time to be in this space in the heart of payments and commerce in this time and age and this day and age. And I'm very looking forward to our discussion today.
Thank you very much, JK. If I may ask you to go next, please. Sure. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm JK Khalil. I look after the business in Saudi Arabia and Bahrain for Mastercard. In a previous life, I was the Senior Vice President of Digital for AlTahan Group. My organization gave birth to one of the largest luxury online players in the Middle East, Unas, a multi-branded lifestyle play called Nisnas, Mamas and Papas, and Gap. And under the last 5 years, I helped transform the digital arm of a traditional
I think you're on mute, Mohamed. I think you said thank you and you're welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you for pointing out that I'm on mute. Majed, tell us a little bit about yourself, sir.
Hi everyone, thank you very much. This is Majed AlTahan. I'm the founder and CEO of AYM Commerce and co-founder and MD of Danube Online. We actually run and manage the online platform for the online groceries for Danube. And we've been doing this since a very long time now. And during the crisis, we've scaled up significantly. The actual demand has grown a lot. So we're trying to cope with the new circumstances. And this is what we do day to day currently.
Thank you very much. Ryan, how are you doing, sir?
Very well, thank you. Had a baby boy about 8 weeks ago, so not sleeping as much as I'd like, but
congratulations.
well enough otherwise. So I currently lead data analytics for the Chalhoub group. Previously, I was at Dyson in a similar role. Before that, Google. Before that, I was much cooler because I was working on startups. None of them very successful, but at least being able to say that you're a co-founder, right? Is a very cool thing. I think COVID for us as a group has been a interesting challenge. Not so much because it has accelerated the transformation, but mainly because I think it reaffirmed a lot of the principles that we already set out on some 900 days ago when we initially started our transformation. So we'd already recruited new types of talent, reorganized processes, introduced new platforms in the group, and if nothing else, COVID really was almost a kind of a clear signal that yes, all of these investments that were made, were made for the right reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. So gentlemen, I think the theme of the conversation is quite pertinent based on your backgrounds. And if I may just start with a general open question and say, what has been the biggest challenges facing your business today? JK, if you don't mind taking that one. You're on mute again.
It's far easier. I'm not used to
just leave it.
I don't think any of us is used to Zoom. So look, challenges wise, I think the most difficult challenge that, as you can imagine, Mohamed, will typically affect any business, regardless of size or location, is the human element, right? That has challenged all of us. And that is both at the personal and professional level. So at the personal level, how do you cope with this? What do you focus on? Obviously, the first thing you want to do is take care of your family, look after your loved ones, make sure that especially if you're somebody like me or you who's an expat, that everybody that is your, all your relatives basically are safe. And then, you start focusing on an immediate sort of circle of influence, which is yourself and your immediate family. And I think that's been the biggest challenge, is adaptation, because the next immediate thing was, okay, so now we all have to work from home. So how do you manage that? What does that mean for the organization, for the teams, my teams, the larger team that I'm part of, in MENA, and so on and so forth. So that human element is extremely important, both at the personal and professional level. And I think we've all gone through it without exception. I think we're now, as we progress through this new normal, whether we accept it as a new normal or not, it is a new normal at the end of the day. And we have learned to basically work from homes. And as you can see, I'm setting up my home office, which actually was there before COVID, has never been used more than used in the last 4 months. So it had a few major upgrades here and there. And, once you and your team have basically set up a new baseline for, working from home, working, remotely, and managing to contain and stabilize your operation across distances, across time zones, platforms and technologies. I think once you're past that, can you just raise your head, take a breath and say, okay, now how do I immediately support my partners, my customers, new entities, and so on and so forth, to be able to, continue to be relevant and, provide that sense of resiliency and sense of continuity that, especially like in the case of Mastercard, a very large technology organization, is expected of you. I mean, we are part of the many national and global payment infrastructures, so there is in no way an expectation that we would ever falter in these kind of situations. Actually, the whole infrastructure is designed to withstand these kind of events, so to speak, right? We talk about 99.999% resiliency and continuity, always on. And I think I'm happy to report that during COVID, this was not an issue. The real one issue that we had, to be very honest with you, is the exposure that we bring to the ecosystem through the partnerships that we have. Meaning, today, if I'm working with a bank and for whatever reason that bank, God forbid, are in a tough financial liquidity situation, they're not able to meet or honor their obligations, then I would be exposing that global ecosystem to that weakness. Right? So for instance, say you use your card, right? You buy an item from Danube online, but for whatever reason, while we told Danube on your behalf that the customer was good, say in 2 days for whatever operational risk reason, so totally operational, non-financial related, you as a financial institution have a settlement issue. You're not able to pay your dues to the participants in the ecosystem in time. Then Danube's acquiring bank is going to be in trouble. Danube's financial obligations are not going to be met, and they're going to have a cash flow problem. And imagine that as a snowball effect if it escalates or if it replicates across the ecosystem. So I think once we got past the human element, the first thing we did is we worked very closely with our partners to make sure that that element, what we call financial or settlement risk, is immediately mitigated and taken out of the equation to ensure and really safeguard the resiliency of the entire ecosystem. And so far, as you have noted, I mean, over the last few months, payments hasn't been a problem because of these measures that we've taken. We have business continuity plan that automatically kick in when things like these happen. So, glad to report that this is one crisis we have averted from an operational and financial risk settlement perspective quite well.
Indeed. And Majed, I'm sure in your world, you've seen a massive shift between consumer behavior in the brick and mortar world shifting to online. How's that affected your business in light of, your digital marketing strategy, your ability to fulfill, and your general strategy as a whole?
Okay, in terms of the business, actually, the most challenging bit is to be able to cope with the suddenly surging in demand. So again, I do agree with my colleagues here that, again, the human factor is very important. Well, during the journey, there are a lot of people who couldn't even, cope with the current situation. They couldn't work in such a very challenging environment. So some of them choose to stop working. Some of them choose to wait until they see what's going on. So a lot of things has changed. Even our marketing tactics. You cannot be sending a promotional email or an offer to any customer during these, pandemic timings. So even the communication has changed. We've changed the way we communicate. We shifted all our communication to communicating to the people that staying safe currently is the most important thing. We stopped actually promoting items because we felt that this is not the time to actually go after your customers with offers or bundle deals or whatever. So we have changed our marketing strategies. We have changed our communication. Even early during the first lockdown in the pandemic, we also stopped all banners, all push notifications. We just have put, some messaging around God save us all. We hope all of you are safe. We started sending our customers letters and emails telling them that we're there for you, we're there to support. So, stay safe. This is what we were communicating. So during these times, our message was only the most important thing is for all the customers, everyone around us is to stay safe. So it has been a new way of working. We completely dropped all offers, all promotional communication, just for the sake of being able to communicate to our customers that now the most important thing is safety and your health and, to be able to cope with the current pandemic. So this is one of the major changes. Plus, of course, you need to be able to quickly scale up all the infrastructures you have, all the servers, all the IT team, people on call, people on the ground. So it has been extremely challenging.
Understood. And Ryan, I mean, you're Mr. Data, and obviously Chalhoub being a predominantly brick and mortar operation, what have you seen in your business, and by way of challenges and validation to the hypothesis that you had pre-corona, post-corona?
Well, I mean, look, firstly, it turns out that when you have 800 stores and you close all of them, that's going to have a certain financial impact on the business. I think, as my fellow panelists said, I think the human element, first and foremost, I think was the most critical one, right? I mean, both in terms of that kind of circle where you need to make sure that you can kind of like look after yourself, you need to make sure you can look after your team and your employees, and you need to make sure you can look after your customers, right? And I think kind of beyond that, then it really was about figuring out how we deliver kind of business continuity, right? Now, some of that is falling back on capabilities that we'd already developed, right? So, for example, leveraging our e-commerce facilities, but now 10x greater at greater scale. Obviously, putting even more of a focus on elements like data and analytics or supply chain and logistics, given how critical it is to have situational awareness and kind of operational agility during these kind of times, particularly when you're looking at things like customer satisfaction, which of course for us as a kind of company is incredibly important. And then I think there's also a longer term impact, which is considering what this new normal looks like, right? And that's not maybe something that everyone's to think about, but clearly companies have to evolve as a result of this period. And so, we've also made a very difficult decision to resize the business somewhat, and saying farewell to some very valued colleagues, because we know that we need to, reorganize our organization somewhat to be ready for the kind of future state. And so, it's a combination both of continuing on this journey that we have been on for the past years, but now also making some tough decisions and working incredibly hard to bring about certain other changes that we know are required to take organization where it needs to go.
Understood. And guys, we talk about consumer behavior a lot and what it was pre-corona, and obviously with 800 doors and the likes of your traditional brick and mortar guys being closed, leaving online being the only channel that is available. Post-corona or the new norm world, do you see that behavior changing back to what it was prior to the pandemic, or do you see some stickiness by way of, I now know to order my groceries online, or my Gucci's online, or my clothes online? What are your views, Majed?
Well, actually, we've seen that there is a change in the overall behavior. So again, when we started promoting during the pandemic, as I told you, we were not promoting the actual product. We were promoting the actual behavior. So this behavior currently is continuing because for many reasons, but the most important reason is that until now, there is no cure for this disease. So people has to be safe, has to keep that in mind, that although the lockdowns are lifted, but that is purely an economical decision. The government is saying that if you don't need to go out, it's actually, you should stay home. You should stay safe. So what we see is that we're currently still in the pandemic. This is not finished yet. So again, we've seen a shift. We've seen a change in behavior. We've seen that the priorities of the customers are changing. Currently, our customers' priorities are not going to a supermarket or a grocery to buy my groceries. They can get it through an online platform. So we see that this is still the case. We still see that the transaction rates are high. And as I told you, the overall situation is that everyone knows that the pandemic is not over yet. So this is the new norm, and we're trying to cope and build all our capabilities and all our features around what we're seeing currently in the market.
Understood. And Ryan, what are your thoughts on this?
So I think, a lot of these discussions tend to be relatively black and white. People want to say, oh no, the old world is dead. It's now, consumers have gone online, etc. Or alternatively, oh, this internet thing, won't stick around. People are going to go back to physical stores, as quickly as possible. And I think that's kind of missing the point. And we as an organization for the last couple of years, haven't, spoken about the need to develop e-commerce capabilities. We've always said we want to develop hybrid capabilities, right? For us, the essence of customer centricity is that you meet the customer where they want to be met. So that could mean that somebody wants to, walk into, Level Shoes and talk to our incredibly talented sales associates, and get some expert feedback. Or it could be that they're, browsing one of our websites, as they're on the move thinking, oh my gosh, this latest pair of sneakers, I know exactly, that those are the ones I want. I know my sizing, and then ordering them. Again, either to their home or click and collect straight to the store for the next time that they're visiting the mall. So for us, yes, we obviously see a kind of like enhanced rate of e-commerce visitors and conversion, even as the stores are opening up. But I think it's very much about finding that equilibrium again, right? Where we're going to see a certain share of transactions in happening in our kind of physical stores and share of it happening online. And you might see that a higher percentage is in online now, mainly because some people have maybe conquered their fear of buying something over the internet over the past couple of weeks. But I think it's very much, again, underscoring the importance of having a proper hybrid strategy and being truly customer centric.
Understood. So I'd like to kind of zoom in, given that this is a Mastercard sponsored event on payments. And what I know from, again, previous life and being in touch with my team, that COD, or cash on delivery, which was largely 60–70% penetration in Saudi Arabia, came to a grinding halt when Airmex wouldn't, process those. JK, what are your views on the alternative payment methods that came to light as a result of the pandemic?
Look, interestingly, there's probably no better time for the pandemic to hit Saudi than when it did. If you like roll back 2 years back, right? Mada rolled out Mada Pay. Saudi Pay is the infrastructure, domestic payment infrastructure operator. They rolled out Mada Pay, the tokenized aggregated wallet. Banks started to roll out their own solutions like Riyadh Pay. Then you'll have Apple Pay came quickly to market in 2019. Then interestingly, the domestic operator against Saudi Pay worked with us on integrating our payment gateway platform, MPGS, into the domestic network, allowing all domestic debit transactions to be, domestic debit cards, the Meta cards, to be able to be accepted on online commerce. So the lead up to this has been, ideal. And from a timing perspective, obviously this is still a disaster. In terms of what happened, a human disaster for sure. But from a timing perspective, I think the ecosystem today would be way more ready. You will note if you compare with what would have been the case 2 years ago, right? Or even like a year ago. So from that perspective, the readiness was there. All right. Now, I think the biggest element of change that we have seen during this pandemic is the human behavior element, right? People, to Majed's point, who are not used to like buying groceries online, have to switch, or swift if you want to call it this way, switch or shift to buying online, right? Their groceries, the essentials. You're talking about just buying, the basics, rice, sugar, coffee, meat, milk for the kids and stuff like that. Now, when they have to do that, and everybody had to do that at the same time, it is ideal because, despite Majed using and most merchants, very subtle and elegant messaging around, hey guys, stay home, stay safe, and we're going to be here to support you. That was a learning curve because a lot of these consumers who couldn't care less, right? Actually love to drive out to the supermarket, to Danube and the others to buy their groceries, maybe be away from the kids whining and kicking and screaming for a while and come back. They had to now sit down, behind the desk during, calls or between calls and order the basics and get them delivered. So that was a massive shift in human behavior. Now we've done interestingly a survey back in March, April across Middle East Africa, but obviously covers Saudi as well and most of our large markets. And we found that the behavior not only had shifted, but there was a clear indication that people going forward are not going to be behaving like pre-pandemic behaviors. So I'll share with you like some of the things that we heard. We heard, for instance, stuff like 60% of people had already used more than one form of contactless payments, meaning using their phone and Apple Pay or MetaPay, or using a contactless tap and go card. We've heard people saying that 80% of the time in Saudi after the pandemic, they are more likely to stick to using contactless to avoid touching stuff or touching the chip and pin pad POS machine. So, interestingly, at the same time, which was great, Saudi Pay raised the contactless threshold to pay without having to enter your PIN from, I think, what used to be like 100 riyal to 250 riyals, right? Which is great. In Dubai, that went from 250 to 500. So regulators quickly started to realize that they need to sort of, give more breathing room to the consumer to cover more touchless or contactless transactions, and hence significantly reduce the risk, right? So the other thing that was interesting also, I think, is merchants were able to quickly, especially large merchants, to quickly accelerate their transition to digital. Many had to pivot, like in the case of Chalhoub, and they are still going through that sort of existential exercise. Why do I deprioritize? How do I reprioritize? How do I shift my portfolio? How do I move around my product from this channel to that channel, and so on and so forth? And I think that exercise will continue because this is not, we're not in a sort of static situation, we're in a dynamic, fluid situation. As the pandemic restrictions sort of ease out, businesses will have to reopen. But I think it's interesting to test and learn and try new things during this time where people are forced to go through certain kind of behaviors, and the agency factor has been reduced in terms of what we can take on a daily basis. I think to your earlier question also on where the biggest question mark to me is going to be is how quickly we're going to see platforms that enable the smaller, medium-sized business and the small brick and mortar, mom and pop, the bakala shop, how quickly we can bring them into the digital economy. And to that end, I mean, you probably must have read about it. Mastercard is working, or we have committed to bring 1 billion people into the digital economy by 2025. That's 1 billion, out of which in
a very noble goal.
Yeah, we have, or we're going to try to work on 10 million, out of which there's going to be 50 million SMEs, 25 million women entrepreneurs, but that's globally, right? So in the region, we're going to look at 10 million SMEs to help bring into the digital economy. And that's through a number of means, including digital technology, including working with startups and entrepreneurs and various other tools and platforms. So hopefully, Saudi Arabia being one of the largest markets in Middle East Africa, we're hoping that they will get also, or we'll have the opportunity to work with a lot of these SMEs to bring them into the digital economy. Because I think that is the segment that will hurt the most, obviously, from being able or not being able, depending on agility, to transcend physical and shift to digital platforms and economy.
And perhaps JK and Omar, maybe at the end of this webinar, if JK, you can put a link of any of the audience members who are interested in partaking into this great initiative by Mastercard, how they can learn more, or if they are in that sector, i.e. SMEs that want to take advantage of the help that Mastercard can provide into getting them into the digital world, that would be really helpful for the audience. Majed, I look at you, obviously, commodity, groceries. How has alternative payments been a driver for you by way of customer experience or conversion?
Okay, customers in the market has been always, cash driven. So we're a cash society. Majority of our transaction pre-pandemic was COD. Well, this was something we continuously kept actually promoting alternative payment method, because even though before the pandemic, it's much easier to handle orders without actual cash. I mean, you transact online, you pay online, you get everything done. And then operations, has to fulfill your order. Driver wouldn't have to wait, will not exchange cash bills, will not exchange change and stuff like that. So we kept promoting alternative payment method way before the pandemic actually started. But what happened during the pandemic is that it was actually a governmental instruction to stop handling.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
So we completely stopped the COD in our platforms. And we did that since day one of the pandemic, and this is still the case until today. And we're not seeing any drops. It's the exact opposite. As also AK mentioned, that now it has been a great time because all alternative payment methods are active, especially the Mastercard, which is the debit card. Now you can pay using your debit card online. That was a very big barrier because not everyone has credit cards, but majority of our customers do have debit cards. So they weren't able to use their debit card online until recently, prior to the pandemic. So currently we see a lot of, actually we stopped COD completely, but now people adapted to this new method. And to be honest, it made the operations much easier. I mean, you can reconcile easier, you can refund electronically, you can deal with the actual cash all through the accounts and stuff like that. So eliminating the cash factor made also the fulfillment much faster, made the driver's job also much faster as well. And even though now with a lot of players are reactivating the COD, we took a decision that we will keep it off for now. And we want to see that we hopefully will move to a completely COD-free business during this year as well.
So you don't see a return to COD anytime in the near future?
I really don't see, no, because as everyone's saying, this is the new norm now. So
sure.
People, currently when you exchange note or cash bills, people see that this is a very strange behavior currently. This was the extreme opposite prior to the pandemic. It was very normal to exchange cash. So currently, even if you go to a store, you'd really rather not to exchange cash bills or just pay with a contactless payment method or using your card. And you really don't want to touch this pad, don't want to put your PIN code. So this is something that is, people are adapted to this. So we're hoping that this continues. It's actually much safer, much easier for both customers and the fulfiller as well.
Understood, and absolutely. Ryan, you being the eye in the sky that sees all data, Chalhoub must have experienced a shift in demand across categories where the nice to haves are kind of shelved now and more about must haves. I'm now working from home. I'm not in a suit. I want to make my house prettier, more comfortable. What can you tell us a little bit about the demand, or the shift in demand and product groups?
So I think generally, what we've seen is that for particularly in products that people can easily enjoy at home, like beauty products, for example, on faces.com, we've seen a massive increase. Products where they make kind of good smaller kind of gifting, etc. Like Swarovski, etc. Have done very well. I mean, don't get me wrong, we've still seen major purchases in other categories as well. But I think to your point, there's definitely a distinction between products that people explicitly buy for themselves because they're looking to treat themselves versus products that people buy because they kind of enjoy sharing it with others, maybe comparing and contrasting the latest styles, etc. So I think in many cases we haven't necessarily seen like a stop in sales in one category and a massive spike in the other. But we've definitely seen some subtle shift in just certain brands, I guess, being easier to transact online than others, which also makes sense, right? Because if you are talking about let's say a cleanser or a particular moisturizer you're familiar with, there's no issue with ordering them online. But are you immediately going to spend $1,000 on a pair of shoes that might not quite fit? Requires a different state of mind. And so what I think is interesting is that this whole process, whether it's around products or payments, can also be seen as a kind of educational journey for customers. So you'll see that, for example, certain customers, when they purchase things like shoes, will order 2 sizes because they're not quite sure which size they want, and they know they can return one of them. Whereas for other customers, it might not be immediately obvious that is a way of shopping that exists, right? So they might just purchase a pair of shoes, and if it doesn't fit, they might send it back and order another one, etc. And so I think the key question for us is coming out of this, how will the expectations of our customers evolve, and how will we need to set ourselves up to really engage with them in the best way possible?
Okay, so a follow-on question on that, Ryan. So, you're an omni-channel retailer. There's brick and mortar, there's online. Obviously, Saudi Arabia just opened up today, I think. Dubai has slowly been relaxing the restrictions. Consumers are going to start transacting in the brick and mortar world. How do you shift your customer engagement, the way you communicate across push notifications, email, SMS, in-store, to cater to their new habitat, their new environment, their new norm?
Yeah, so I think for us, it's really doubling down on that omni-channel aspect and making clear that we're there to engage with the customer via whatever mode they choose. So, for example, we have our loyalty program Muse, and before you would have some customers who maybe never transact online. They make sizable purchases, collect a lot of points in store, and all of a sudden, they're no longer able to kind of go to stores. So then obviously they expect that experience to kind of continue online, which is something that our teams have put a lot of thought in. Similarly, we might have customers who've discovered new brands, engaged with new kind of products or styles during this time of lockdown, because let's be honest, a lot of people maybe have indulged in a spot of retail therapy as a means of distracting themselves, during the past couple of months. And we obviously want to make sure that experience then kind of continues seamlessly when they enter our stores, because of course it's a huge missed opportunity if someone who has engaged with us maybe multiple times, let's say via a website or an app, then walks into a store and says, okay, well, I'd like to explore some other things I like, and we were to say, well, sorry, like, we've never seen you before, like we've never heard of you. It's like, no, of course, right? Like if you're shopping with us, you're shopping with us. And I think that's also why, I'm kind of like very passionate about being in retail, because, I'm, like I said, especially, my background is very kind of like tech focused. It's been very much focused on like, the systems and the data, which of course is interesting, but the real magic comes from that human interaction. And so for us as a group, what we want to make sure is that we leverage these technologies as a way of augmenting, the experience, right? We want to make the experience even more human, even more tailored, even more satisfying, both for our customers as well as our employees delivering those experiences.
Agreed. And JK, with Majed and Ryan, we've almost got, extremes of the spectrum of, commodity, consumables, everyday use product to, luxury, retail, nice to haves, aspirational products. For those not into consumables, and obviously in the era of a pandemic, what advice would you have for retailers to succeed in this digital arena?
Look, it's a very difficult question, to be honest with you, and I sympathize a lot with the smaller size retailers, either who don't have the funding or agility to be able to quickly shift, or those who had not gone or undergone any transformation or any even started on the journey of digitization over the last few years. Look, the hurdles are many, and I'm assuming I'm addressing obviously those businesses that have begun at least the journey towards digitization in one way or another. The platforms are many, right? So the paths or the roads to Rome are many. One at least has to start walking in that direction, right? Depending on which path you take, you'll have to be mindful of what's going on around you from a sort of a consumer perspective and technology perspective, because both both aspects have to be addressed given the challenges that they present. Let me illustrate. So if you look at the consumer, for instance, right, what's going on in the consumer world? So the first thing that consumers today have in mind is mistrust. When I talk to many of the consumers in Saudi and many of the merchants in Saudi, and I say, just explain to me cash on delivery. I cannot understand for the life of me why. And you're talking about merchants who have gone the extra mile, and I think Danube used to do this, of giving you a discount for paying with an electronic, means of payment, or or card or whatever, and actually surcharge you for paying cash, and people still prefer to use cash on delivery, right? And Majed is shaking his head, he agrees. When you say, why do they do this? It's because consumers do not trust, e-commerce, and do not trust the kind of logistics we've had in the e-commerce world over the last decade, let's say. So that's totally understandable. So for that, I would say that the first thing you have to do as a merchant is quickly build that trust. Give people that reassurance that, what you see is what you get. What you order is what you're going to get. And start working on that messaging. Start coming up with the promise of service. Excuse me, because in the digital world, it's very different. When you walk into a store, and within 5 minutes, you're going to decide whether you're going to make a buying choice or not. It depends on, the product shelf, many factors, right? Depends on how the customer service will going to treat you. It depends on how, clean the store feels to you. So there's a lot of visual cues, a lot of behavioral cues that you can make a quick decision. In the online world, you could be the best looking platform and you could look exactly like a Nigerian fraud scheme. It's very hard to tell. It's very hard to tell the difference, right? So how do you create that promise of service? And how do you create that commitment to the customer about service excellence? I think this is one very important question. The other thing is, let's say you get past that hurdle. I think the next question you have to grapple with, assuming you can create and you can project a sense of security and reassurance to your customers. How do you drive foot traffic, and what do you do with it? So what is your cost of acquisition? How quickly can you convert those into sales? What kind of data tools are you using to understand behaviors? Where is your sales funnel breaking? How are you fixing those? What is your strategy to drive traffic into new areas? And I'm talking digital areas, not, this is not where you open a store in, I don't know, Slamania because it has more foot traffic than another district of Riyadh or whatever. So I'm talking about, those digital sort of practices that in the physical world, you don't necessarily get exposed to, or you don't need to, or for the longest time, traditionally, you never had exposure to. And now you have to basically get online, create a trusted image, create a reputable brand, differentiate yourself, drive traffic, convert sales, and do all sorts of data hashing and data analytics and advanced data analytics, all the way up to AI and machine learning to be able to just be like the next best merchant next to you. Because Danube or the other merchants are not doing any less. Chalhoub is definitely looking at your data and trying to understand how they can drive more loyalty. And so starting on that journey is extremely important. And I think that a lot of new entrants into the digital space are going to be very novices. So and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. So long as you recognize that as a weakness or as a starting point that you have to build on and start ramping up. So to your earlier point when you said, it would be good for entrepreneurs to understand what Mastercard is doing to help them. Well, look, we work directly with acquiring banks on the e-commerce side and PSPs, the payment service providers. And we provide them with a lot of tools that, such as Simplify, for instance. Simplify, you probably heard of Shopify, right? Anybody can get on Shopify, they list their inventory, bam, they have an online business. So we have a platform called Simplify, and most of the acquirers in Saudi have PGS, our payment gateway system, actually all of them do. And it's very easy for them to, some of them are already doing it, positioning Simplify as an add-on service for the SMEs that, as you know, constitute 99% of the businesses in Saudi. So that's like 1 million businesses out there will be able to just go sign up on Simplify and directly have an online store presence immediately set up for them, accept cards, and get on with their business. I think so. My point is just get on the journey, because there's no way you will know what the questions
just start
answer are unless you are on that journey. And the more you sort of delay that, the more you put your business at risk, and the more you reduce your chances of being able to survive in the new normal. I think that's my key message.
Understood. And Majed, I mean, you're squarely in the online space. You've always been there. You started your journey as JK and amassed a bunch of data. What kind of technologies have you leveraged along this journey that you think had the biggest impact on a customer experience? Whether it's improving it, making it faster, smarter, higher conversion. What would you say some of those key pillars and themes were?
So basically, internally, we have two teams. We have an acquisition team and we have a retention team. So the acquisition team, they have their own, let's say, tools to use, and they have their own tactics and KPIs. Where you're talking about retention, well, again, during the pandemic, retention was not actually a priority for us, because what we do to actually retain the customers is you deeper analyze their shopping behavior. You create and custom made promotions and deals that tailorly fit for your customers. During the pandemic, it was actually a different shift, a different behavior. People were looking at necessities, were looking at basic needs. That's during the early stages of the pandemic. Moving slowly into the pandemic and into the lockdown, people started actually buying the unique things and handpicked things. So again, using our marketing tools, we have a very powerful CRM tools that we leverage a lot. And ever during our inception, we are a data-driven company. So we look closely to our data. We actually try to be close to our customers by looking at what they're buying, what is actually their needs. We conduct a lot of workshops with our customers. So this is all became really handy during the pandemic, because we knew the pre-pandemic, let's say, behavior and the post-pandemic behavior. And we had to cope with all the changes. So again, if you're transacting with us, you could see that we are actually changing our behavior along with the customers and along with what's happening in the country. So although these tools are really powerful to use, they give you a higher retention percentage, and they make your customer transact more. But again, during the pandemic, we've seen that addressing the basic customer needs is actually more important than creating or tailor making promotions or deals for them. So we've tried our best to actually leverage on the current data to see where the customers are actually buying, and to start to making deals that fits all during this challenging phases. So although the actual data mining is still there, but let's say, if you can say, the output of this data mining is totally different pre-pandemic and post-pandemic.
Sure, I completely understand that. And I have a follow-on question for you, Majed. So Majed, I mean, I'd have to say pre-pandemic, online groceries was relatively a blue ocean. There was only a handful of players, particularly here in the UAE, guys like Bulkwiz and Carrefour was just trying to get their operation in order with that. Now, obviously, post-pandemic, you've got the likes of Katopi coming into play. Talabat joined the bandwagon with Delivery Heroes Groceries. Noon with Now, and other players who have typically not played in your space, crowding that space out for you. What are your thoughts on the new competition now?
I totally agree with you. The space is more crowded, but again, the clientele base has grown significantly, where it's not the same number of customers that I was targeting when I was, with a handful of other fellow colleagues, we call them, because again, during the pandemic, we literally were very close with everyone working in the same sector. We've shared knowledge, we've shared tactics, and we've tried to actually fulfill as much as possible the needs of our customers. But again, it is currently, yes, it is crowded. And we always say competition is really healthy, because they also open an untapped markets. They penetrate untapped areas. They actually grew the overall clientele base. So although the competition or the players are larger, but you can say the pie is now much bigger. We're catering for significantly more customers than we used to do prior to the pandemic, especially with the grocery shopping, because groceries are very close to the Saudi people, the Saudi family, or whoever is living and working in the kingdom. They used to treat the actual, supermarket going out is actually an activity. And sure. We've seen this changing ever since the tourism started in Saudi, and Saudi being opened up to a lot of businesses and sectors in the entertainment area. And we were welcoming a lot of nationalities with visa upon arrival. So again, we've seen a slightly change in behavior prior to the pandemic, because people now had more things to do. You can go have fun, you can go watch a movie, you can go to a concert, you can go to a lot of activities that are on the seafront and all these things. So slowly, the going to a supermarket being the main activity in the kingdom is actually, we're seeing it slowly decreasing. But again, we're not saying that people will not go to the supermarket. Although until today, we always encourage people to go, because if you also go to the supermarket, if you go to Danube, you will be more loyal to the brand. You can see a lot of new things that is going in the actual supermarket. Then you will transact both online and offline. So we keep pushing people to actually visit, but not, of course, during the pandemic. I'm talking prior to the pandemic. So we've seen a change in behavior on that, because people now had a lot of more things to do. And in the pandemic, actually it has become a necessity, so people are transacting online. So it's actually going in a direction that we're benefiting from.
Thank you, Majed. Ryan, I mean, similar question to you, sir. Chalhoub, one of the few retailers, both in the apparel and beauty space, as well as in the luxury space, that has been online for quite some time. Obviously, pandemic hits, and every shop in the mall now has a Shopify account or in a web front, whether in a marketplace like Noon or as a standalone. Some successful, others not so much. How have you navigated that new competitive landscape?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think there's probably two aspects of this, right? One is that we obviously have mono brand stores, right, as part of our portfolio, be it Tory Burch or Lacoste, Dolce & Gabbana, etc. If you're going to shop at those brands, right, you're going to shop at those brands, right? So if you want to have the access to the new season collection, if you really want to have that experience, there's kind of like no competition there, not really. And so, I think on those types of, for those types of a brand, it's relatively easy. It's really just a case of saying, well, maybe the expectation of the customer has been enhanced by the fact that we're seeing broader changes in how people shop for clothing, right? How people purchase luxury products. So therefore, we need to keep evolving our offering to make sure that we really have a class-beating experience, which makes sense, right? Because if you're paying a premium for a brand, you also expect to have a premium experience, whether that's in-store, on websites, or an app. When it comes to our kind of multi-brand offerings, right? So be it a Level Shoes or a Faces.com or Triano, those brands have always had competition, because there are multi-brand shoe retailers there. Are other websites where you can purchase beauty products, etc. And so for those brands, it's really just about ensuring that we double down on the things that we believe gives us our competitive edge, right? Making sure that we hire really passionate, fantastic staff, right? Making sure that we get great exclusives, making sure that we provide excellent customer service, making sure that we have a meaningful loyalty program, and most importantly, making sure we always listen and take the customer's feedback into account, so we can keep growing and evolving with them as well. So I don't necessarily think that it's opened up a new frontier of competition in that sense. I think it is just given us another reason to continue forging forward on this journey.
Understood. And Ryan, what's unique about your role is that you've seen data from brick and mortar as well as online. So what would you say, you talked about premium services. How do you, justify the premium on the product and create that very special, warm feeling when a customer pulls the trigger and buys something from your stores, whether online or in stores? How do you take that premium experience from a brick and mortar environment and translate that to an online site or an online transaction?
Yeah, it's a great. I mean, that's a great question, Mohamed. I think there's a couple of aspects, and it really depends on which part of the journey people are on, right? I think when it comes to the kind of initial kind of discovery, right, you want to make sure that you're not running spammy ad campaigns, right? You're not swamping people in text messages, especially here where there are obviously less regulation placed in certain other markets. I mean, it amazes me that some brands will send me like 10 text messages in a day. Immediately, right, that premium experience goes out the window because I'm never shopping there again. Well, maybe that's my European mindset. I don't know. I don't want to be biased here. And secondly, then when people land on the website, you want to make sure you've got a good experience, right? You want to make sure it's a robust platform. You want to make sure, that it's tasteful design. You want to make sure that you have the right kind of product selection. And you also want to make sure that then when people order the product, you want to make sure that you actually can live up to that promise, right? Now, to be perfectly frank, we could not guarantee, you know, next day or 2-day or 3-day delivery, you know, for every single product, for every single brand over the past couple of months, because there were massive impacts, right, on supply chain, right, delivery partners, you know, who were unable to fill orders, etc. And that's okay as long as you're honest about it, right? And that to me is really what that premium experience is about, right? It's knowing that not just the product is genuine, but knowing that the experience and communication you're getting around that product is genuine. And that, of course, then also translates to the final leg, which is if people do have that product and then decide, you know, it's not quite what they were hoping for, right, or decide to go with another color, making sure that when they contact us from a customer care perspective, that we can, you know, effectively execute those reverse logistics, and again, give some transparency into that process overall.
Understood. And Ryan, you referred to the loyalty card Muse. So you know, how has that loyalty card or that data behind the loyalty card helped you during the pandemic?
Yeah, so it's actually, the great thing is it's an app, which is even better than a loyalty card, because it means that even when people are locked down, they can just go onto the App Store, onto Google Play, and download the Muse app, which is great, and I recommend everyone do. You know, I think, you know, what's fantastic about you know, developing that kind of customer understanding via a loyalty program is that we start to learn more about our kind of customers in aggregate, right? And I think from a data perspective, this is always important to emphasize, because, you know, some people might be a little mistrustful of saying, oh, well, why would I give my data to a brand? What do they want to know about me? But of course, the most valuable part of the experience is the fact that we can provide an integrated kind of like analysis of the customers as a whole, right? So we can say, okay, we know that overall, for example, these types of experience that we provide with Muse are the most meaningful. You know, or we can say, okay, we know that when we ran a promotion with this particular brand, that worked best in this country versus that other market. And so I think, you know, what's fantastic is that it allows you to create a kind of like constantly evolving offering that becomes more and more relevant to the consumer space at large over time, as opposed to something which is a little bit tone deaf. You know, you launch it and you basically say, well, this is just what customers have to put up with because we've decided this is what it is. It's like, no, like we want to learn, right? And make sure that we keep innovating.
Very cool. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for the insight. It's been absolutely insightful and very helpful as we navigate this pandemic as an ecosystem in the region. Time to bring it to a wrap, I'm told. So I'll just kind of give a free 3 minutes each to weigh in with any last thoughts, any last statements that you think will be helpful for our audience. JK, what would you like to share?
I think just before I do, there's a couple of questions from the audience.
I'm not so sure where we can take them. I mean, it's, Omar, are we good on time to take the 3 questions that are open?
I would take, at this point, I would take one question just because I think our audience has set an hour for this. So I would, if you'd like to take one of the questions from here, unless JK, you'd like to extend this further, but I think an hour is solid and we want to keep the respect for our attendees' time.
Yeah.
JK, may I recommend the health tech startup one? Actually, I'm curious as well. You know, what advice do you have by way of best available payment gateways across the UAE and the MENA region?
Well, of course, I'm going to say Mastercard because
no, say it.
Shocking. No, I mean,
I don't know.
No, but I'll answer the question differently because I think that there's a better way to ask the question. So, as any startup, not just a health tech or any startup, I would say just choose your banking partner wisely. There are banks that are specialized in acquiring, and there are banks that are easier to work with from a SME or startup and entrepreneurship perspective than others. I think a good place to start, if you can reach out to Payfort and talk to them. Payfort are also part of the Amazon group, so they can help you. They are very, if you're Dubai based, that would be a good PSP to talk to. You can talk to PayTabs and Tap, also in Saudi and you know, in Hyperpay. There's a lot of like PSPs, so just look up PSP and you can find any of them. They're all would be much easier to work with, or if you're working with a bank your primary bank is a strong acquiring bank, you would know if you asked them, then they would also be able to help you plug in your health tech or any startup into their payment gateway platform.
Good answer. JK, final thoughts?
Look, I think this is a very interesting time in all of our history, and definitely in the history of e-commerce. I think there's a lot of potential for players, especially those who are just entering digital economy. There's no better time than the present to take advantage of this blip in history, so to speak, right? And to position yourself for the digital economy. It is something that we thought was going to take decades. I think we've all proven wrong. It's got to take a few months, and you got to do it very fast. A lot of technologies are out there. Everything is ready. The big players are already moving. So if you're a smart player, a nimble player, a smaller player, you can definitely take advantage of the situation. Reach out to us. We're more than happy to help and point you in the right direction. We're available across all the social media channels, and we're happy to help.
Thank you, JK. Majed, sir, final thoughts?
Pandemic, by God's will go. We had time to review a lot of our activities, a lot of our behaviors. We used to do things in a different way, and now we got the time to review whatever we're doing. A lot of our behaviors has changed to the correct, actually, behavior in our all the day, activities, day-to-day things. So God bless them all. God bless us all. I really hope everything goes back to normal. People go back and enjoy their lives, and hopefully the pandemic had taught everyone across the globe the right way to act and the right way to live. So God bless us all.
Thank you, Majed. Ryan, any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, I think that to my fellow panelists' point, this has been a challenging time, and hopefully we will all emerge out of it stronger, collectively. And as far as businesses go, I would hope that for most companies, this hasn't been a journey from standing still, right? I hope that many companies already had these transformation efforts in place, that they're already evolving to meet kind of like changing customer demands and changing customer needs. And if anything, that this has just kind of like underscored and emphasized the importance of these types of initiatives, because at the end of the day, there's only so much that you can control as an organization. It's a bit like being on a ship, right? You can't fight the weather, but you can set your sails. So I hope that all of us will be able to set our sails wisely, both for this storm and whatever may come next.
Well said, sir. Well said. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for sharing your insights, your backgrounds, and your journeys. Very helpful for the audience, I hope, and quite insightful for me. Till then, please stay safe, stay well, and I wish you all the best in your digital journeys. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.